All
People
right,
coming in
guys. So
already.
yeah, we're going live, and we'll wait about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll kick off the webinar here. So let us know in the chat where you guys are from. We'd love to see, where on the planet you guys are at.
Where on the
I'm seeing
planet?
some folks in already. We got Ben, Brooke, Daniel, Eric. Howdy, everybody.
Getting a report that the chat's disabled. Alan, if you can check on that.
Give the people a voice.
Will do.
Yeah, have
We
you
got
guys,
Josh in here. I know Josh.
while we wait, this is the new favorite product of all time. Have you guys tried this? The coconut water at Trader Joe's?
No, I haven't,
Mind blowing. Give
but
it
I
a
love
go.
coconut water.
It's 10 ounces and it's $4, which is a total ripoff, but it's absurd. I'm not even a coconut water fan. Have you got this chat enabled for everybody?
Can you guys try the Q&A? See if that works. Yeah, the
Okay,
Q&A works. That's what we're going to be using.
There
sounds
we
good.
go.
Okay.
Stefano says hi there. Hi, Stefanos.
Greetings
Greetings
from
from
Greece.
Greece.
Damn, let's go.
All right, I'm going to jump right into it.
Awesome.
Sounds good. You guys can see that all right?
I got on my side.
Okay, so appreciate everybody for joining today. We are joined by Jeremiah and Reese, who are our partner agency when it comes to the content creation. Today, we're going to be talking about all things meta strategy, not only on the paid side, but also on the creative side. And yeah, I mean, just some quick wins that you guys can implement and some of our learnings as an agency and Reese and Jeremiah's learnings from a production standpoint of kind of what it takes to really crush Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So we know this is a crucial time for DTC, and the prep work that goes into it really does kind of pay off throughout the rest of the year, and then going on to the next year. So kind of move on to our presentation. Jorge and I's experience is everything when it comes to direct to consumer funnels, not only on the ad side, but also mid funnel. So in the everything website realm, from CRO to optimizing landing pages or product pages, and then retention marketing. So how do we get the maximum lifetime value for your store, right? So making sure that you have a ecosystem that scales long term. And throughout this presentation, if you guys have any questions, drop them in the Q&A, because we're going to be periodically reviewing that and answering along as we go. So if you guys want to do a quick introduction, Jeremiah and Reese, would love to hear that at this point.
Totally. Yeah, what's up? I'm Jeremiah. I'm the founder and creative lead over at Us Versus Them. We started in 2020, but Reese and I have been working together on content like this for 5 years, and have worked with a lot of fun brands and a lot of cool personalities, celebrities. And we started partnering with MediaJet back in 2020 when we needed a lot of media buying for our clients. And we realized Reese and I were not the best people. So we needed to work with some of the best people. And we've got a great synergy with Alan and George, or Jorge.
All right, so we'd love to see some things you guys are looking to get out of today's session. If you guys want to just type that in the Q&A, and then we'll move on to Jorge's presentation.
Yeah, let us know in the chat. What are you guys looking to learn more about? Current trends, says Christian.
Mm-hmm. All right, yeah, we'll touch on all that. So you can take it here, Jorge.
All right, cool. So Right. So everybody's here because we want to learn about Meta. Like I think Meta's really been uh, a hot topic in the space. A lot of people, since all the changes through iOS and, the way brands are scaling and all these new platforms like TikTok Shop. Obviously, there's a lot of questions as to like why Meta. So just a few high level stats. I mean, the reality is your customers and your potential customers spend time on Meta. We always like exploring with these additional platforms like TikTok Shop and whatever may be coming up, but the reality is like Facebook ads and Meta ads have worked for the last decade, and we expect them to continue to work for the next decade as a heavy like component of our customer acquisition tactics. Um, the next slide. So over 2/3 of all monthly users are active daily. So they're not like our customers are not only on these Meta platforms, like they're spending a lot of time on them. They're consuming their news. They're learning about new products. So it's important to get in front of them with the right content at the right point, right? And at the next slide, we'll see a little bit of we hear a lot about like, oh, well, our age isn't represented on Meta. Like our age, we're targeting young people, they're on TikTok, or we're targeting old people, they're not on them. So this is just an objection that all age groups are really well represented. And the biggest age group is 25 through 34. So yeah, and then that combined with 50% of the content or 50% of the time users are spending on the platform is watching video, just like further pushes the point as to like why brands need to get on top of Meta and its platforms, and really like to get on top of Meta, you need to get on top of the content, because that's what it's all about. So when it comes to creating the right e-commerce framework, I would say like one of the biggest learnings that me and Alan have learned running MediaJet and working with hundreds of stores is that if you don't have the right framework, like right off the bat, you're going to be facing a tougher challenge, right? Than you might need to. Some of those are that your product and offer, they can't just be good. They have to be super good. They have to be great and really offer a solution to a target audience. Stores with AOVs of $70 and above, it's just easier to make them work on Meta. You can find better margins and you don't need to, go for crazy acquisition costs or unrealistic acquisition costs. I would say brands should have a unique selling point, like something that makes them unique in their space that not everyone else offers, that they can then use that on their creative. And the store should either have a healthy like returning customer rate where 50% of the customers that buy the first time buy the second time, or a really high or a high AOV upfront, right? And typically we target a cost of acquisition to 90-day lifetime value. So we'll talk about this metric a lot, which is basically how much does it cost you to acquire a customer and how much revenue do you get out of them in a 90-day period. We like this to be somewhere between 1 to 3 and 1 to 6. So yeah, like that can mean a lot of different things, right? A $20 acquisition cost with $60 90-day lifetime value. Or it can be a much bigger purchase up front with no returning rate, right? So, and if you don't meet all these criteria, like it's not the end of the world. I think it's just about understanding that it plays a role, right? So when we talk about a funnel, which we'll be talking about a funnel as we go into like the specifics of the tactics that we'll be using within Meta, it's important that we're talking about the whole funnel, which not only includes your creative, it also includes the content they engage with on your website. It includes the email list and the VIP list they subscribe to, and ultimately the offer that they submit their credit card information to, right? Like all of that needs to be really tailored for your target buyer. A home run offer, like it really has to check quite a few boxes. And here's just a few examples of like what makes a home run offer. I would say percentage off is definitely not the only way. We're big fans of buy more, save more. So examples like buy 3, get 2 free is one that we run on a lot of accounts. Spend 100, save 20, things like that. And we're not going to spend a ton of time brainstorming offers in this webinar because we're going to talk mostly about account structures, meta structures, and UVT is going to talk about all the creative side. But if you guys want a list of 10 high performing offers that we use this year, just shoot me an email. My email is jorge@mediajetmarketing.com, and we can put it in the chat as well. But yeah, I'll send that to you guys offline just so we can move into the good stuff.
Yeah, one thing I'm going to add here, Jorge, is, I mean, a lot of the times offers are, there seems to be like a negative light on offers from an e-commerce perspective. But us as a performance agency, there's 2 things that we always say. One, an offer is a gift to the new potential customer, right? So you can really distinguish your cold customer offers, which is something you're giving somebody who's never heard of your brand. And you're giving them the opportunity to hop from a competitor to your brand, so there should be some sort of incentive there, and you're doing them a favor. Two is a lot of the people that would have not a lot of the people that converted from the offer were not going to convert anyways. So if you kind of create this framework correctly, you're going to have people coming in through offers that are all cold, and your current users, they won't see it for the most part because it's a first time customer offer, right? So it doesn't really disrupt anything in your funnel. If anything, it's an additional stream of new customers, which is going to lead to a better performance on your initial CPA. So we have a good question here that I want you to answer, Jorge. Somebody said, assuming that you have a good product that is subscription based supplement, how do you see brands increasing their returning customers and preventing one-time customers?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think I'll give an example of a brand we worked with in the supplement space. Exactly. So for them, they had historically been running like what we're looking at on the screen, like a 40% off acquisition offer when they run their heavy offer season. So Black Friday or New Year, or maybe like a late summer offer. That was their main new customer driver, which, like you were saying earlier, like it acquires a certain type of customer, right? Like a deal chaser. And for that brand, I think it was like, how did we crack LTV for them? It's a combo of things. For them, they did an offer which was, it was $100 off your first 3 months. So it was $33 a month. It encouraged users, or it attracted a type of user that already had anticipated, or like in a way micro committed to staying for the first 3 months in order to receive the full benefit of their discount. So that was like one way we did it. I think the type of offer, like a different type of offer attracts a different type of customer, right? So that's why we like buy more, save more, or things like that, or subscription offers where they have to stick around. And we also, like through email and SMS, I think like really like post-purchase communications to customers, like after they buy, we love founders message. We love like guides to help them build this product into their routine. So if it's a supplement, we can do like your new guide to how to feel good or whatever. So just helping the customer build this routine. And I mean, we've seen that if you manage to get a customer to stick around or buy at least 3 times, the chance of them becoming a lifetime or a very loyal customer are really high. So we look at it as like the race to get them to buy 3 times. And of course, like depending on the product, everything can vary, but I mean, that's just a little bit of advice for that question. All right, so let's get into the good stuff. Before we get into account structure, yeah, I mean, I'm sure the majority of you guys are here today to learn about Meta, like try to get, whether you're already, on the platform and things are working and you're looking for just additional strategies, or maybe things aren't working and you're looking for just something new to try, or, you're just trying to get into it, right? And you're trying to see what it's going to take to be successful. So yeah, this is what we're going to cover here. Like, do we run ABO? Do we run CBO? How many ads per ad set? These are all the questions that we're going to answer over the next few slides. Go ahead and go back one slide before we go into this one. We typically, when we think about a meta strategy, we typically like grabbing a store and breaking it down into something like 3 to 5 unique funnels that can contain a variety of different products for that store, or like product categories or pricing options, or really any other differentiating product or factor for that store. Then we grab that funnel, and the creative that we produce for that batch should all speak to that target buyer, right? And within that, we like to use the whole suite of placements. So making sure it's not just like a video delivery or statics only. We like to create a funnel which includes all placements, video, static, short form, long form, to give us the best chance at reaching our target audience. And an example of like 2 or 3 of these funnels would be for a skincare brand that we work with. They did one funnel which was like Shine into Summer or something like that, targeting college age students. And then they did another one which was like family fun, right? So 2 different funnels with 2 different content types. And we're going to go into the specifics of how we set that up within Meta, how we created those funnels and all that in the next few slides. But this next slide will cover just what we were talking about with creative diversification, in terms of, yeah, like if you create a campaign and you include all these different placements, all of a sudden, if there's a lot of people bidding on videos and CPMs go up there, you're well protected and you can really find a lot of opportunities. And yeah, it happens a lot that we scale brands through, video content is obviously huge for brand building, but you want to have a complete suite to give you the best chance. And this will kind of tee us into Jeremiah and UVT on how to produce content that wins. Like, how do you guys equip agencies with all the creative they need to really win on the platform? And we've done it successfully so well with you guys on so many accounts, and some of our fastest growing accounts are fueled by you guys. So personally, really thrilled to see what you guys have put together, and yeah, take it from here.
Sweet. Yeah. So yeah, what I want to talk about for a second is just the content creation and yeah, how to really optimize on sets. We all kind of know how to shoot content, I believe, at this point. And yeah, like Jorge was saying, is like coming up with that full suite of content and not just going out and shooting and walking away with one hero asset that you pour all your time in the day and all your money just to find out that you need to optimize or that ad didn't really work for you guys. So here's two formats that we kind of have in our playbook that allow us to maximize content. And this first format and play that we have, we call the hot swap flow. And this has worked for us when working with A-list artists like Lil Yachty for C4. We have like a limited amount of time. He's only got like 4 hours with us, and we need to shoot a, like the cutout campaign that like is the cutout blow up, billboard you see in 7-Eleven. You need lifestyle photos, you need video assets, short form, and like the hero asset that Yachty's going to post on his Instagram, all within a 4-hour period. This format also works with internal teams where you're just, only have 4 hours in the day where your team to allocate, and you need a wide suite of content. So this format also allows you to have enough content to remix in a bunch of different formats, come up with different hooks, carousels, photo, and video, where you could come up with 50, and we've done this before. We made 100 different assets that we then toss to MediaJet to go and test and get a lot of analytics back on. And so the format for this is really just a videographer that is leading. The photographer could lead here too. It doesn't really matter, but knowing who your lead is, a videographer, photographer, an iPhone creator that's kind of focused on BTS and then stepping in. I'll speak to that in a second. And then a producer assistant that can help just keep things moving. So what this typically looks like for the flow is like the lead. If this was a video lead, he'll work with the talent. He or she will work with the talent. If you have two models, the videographer will step in and shoot some clips, set the scene, get the product looking nice, go and get a couple things that they need. And once they've kind of like got that done and they're ready to move on to what they need next, instead of shutting down for 5, 10, 30 minutes to get the next environment up, you swap in the photographer to jump in and snap their photos, while then the lead goes and preps the next thing and wraps their head around the next thing. And then you can even swap in the iPhone creator. And so while this is happening, the iPhone creator is shooting BTS because sometimes that's what people want to see. And we've had that work on meta ads as well. And then, when the photographer is done, the iPhone creator could step in while everyone else is setting up the next look, and they'll just give the phone to the talent and say, we did this for a jewelry brand where it's like, just go for a walk. We were in downtown LA. It's like, go walk and just, along this backdrop and just get different looks in, kind of grabbing the chain around your neck, showing the detail, perfect clips for us to then put on-screen text and, really like push the value propositions. Yeah, I love this format. It's super fast and engaging, and you really maximize your talent, especially when it's limited. And I'll have Reese kind of speak to this next format that we do for founder content. A lot of people want to interview their founders, but the founders aren't the most social people necessarily. They're not actors. They're not, they're really awkward on set, but it performs really well for us. And I know in the Q&A, we had some people asking for, like best trends right now and things. The last format works for obviously any trend you're trying to go for. But this is a trend that we are seeing that's like working well for us. And regardless of how awkward your founder is, we can make them look great.
Yeah. Thanks, Jeremiah. This is a process. Actually, I just got off set 3 days this week at the offices at Spotify doing this exact process with some of their team members, creating content, not with their founders specifically, but with team members to tell stories about artists and songs, etc. And it very much is in this ballpark of these people aren't actors, they're not influencers, they're writers or they're creators and they have these ideas in their mind, but it's up to us to try to bring that out. So I can explain a little bit of a process of how that works. And then after that, I'll kind of go a little bit high level of like why you should consider doing this and, some other things to consider while you're doing this. So the process when we do this is the team, we have a videographer, and then we also have a script director. So what the script director is there to do is really pull out the best possible lines. On social media, you're competing with very charismatic creators. You're competing with some of the most interesting and influential creators out there. So when your ad pops up and it's a founder sort of mumbling through their script, like that's just not going to work. So what we find is scripting out a few key lines that work really well, whether that's a good hook or a good description of the product or a good description of the story of how the product came to be, and then running those lines 5 and 7 and 10 times and doing it different ways. When I'm on set with these folks who don't have a lot of on-camera experience, I kind of try to get them to get out of their comfort zone and say it different ways. So they'll be like, we started this company in 2018 or something like that. And I'll say, okay, try to say that like a little cooler. Try to say that with a little more energy. Okay, really emphasize 2018. Okay, and just get a ton of different takes of the same line, because that performance in the ad is, what really is going to get someone to stop and listen, especially when it's back to back bumped up against, these very charismatic creators on every platform that you could be advertising on. So that's one process that we do on set. So it's good to have some sort of like bullet point outline and script, come up with a sentence live that like really, sounds true to them and sounds authentic, have them run it a few times. And then for the pre-production, we just make sure we have a good location that tells a bit of the story. We make sure we have, just decent gear, camera and lighting, audio and stuff that sounds good. Just kind of cover your bases on that side. Like I said, with the production, you're running each line, you're trying different takes. And then with post-production, you want to try to edit and export multiple versions of this stuff. This GIF that you're seeing here is from a brand called Mindhoney, and MediaJet works with them, and we've created a lot of this content recently with them. So what we did recently, and it was a little bit mind-boggling because we created more assets than I think we could feasibly handle. But what we did is we had 2 or 3 products that we were trying to create ads around, and we had the opening hook, we had kind of like the middle body section, and then we had some kind of closing call to action. And then we had like multiple versions of a different hook. We had a hook that was like a little bit more edgy. We had a hook that was maybe a little more emotional, one that was kind of in the middle of that zone. Then we had, 1 or 2 product descriptions, and then 3 or 4 closing calls to action. And of course, if you multiply that out, we realized, we could be creating, 100 plus different combinations of all these things. If we have, 3 different hooks and 2 different middles and 5 different endings, the potential combinations of that is great. So what we did after that was we discovered like which hooks we really wanted to test and which ones we really wanted to try, which ones we wanted to stay away from, and then, kicked out a package of maybe 40 or 50 different ads. The reason this is so important, and this is something you all know, but it's worth reiterating. There's a blessing and a curse with the modern media landscape. The blessing is that you don't have to guess anymore. You can test tons of different messaging, but the curse is you can't guess anymore. Like if you want those benefits, you really do have to test different messaging. And so that's, it's a lot more work. It's a lot more testing, it's a little bit less on like intuition and gut and more on just like, what can we try that still is within the bounds of the brand? What can we try that gives us the most opportunity to test different messaging? And what we've discovered with different brands is whether it's posted organically or posted as ads, if you test different messaging, that can then inform the greater placements of your messaging, like a product description or like a homepage headline. If you're posting, you test one message like in this process, okay, let's talk about the product in this kind of way. If you test that and realize, oh, this is really resonating with people, that can also inform your bigger placements as well. If you do a really big video, you know that this little product description really hits home with people. So let's spend, a bunch more on our commercial for that, or let's, put that on the homepage of the website, et cetera. So there's a blessing and a curse. You can't just guess anymore. It's worth testing all this stuff, but when you do the work to do that stuff, you get great insights about what messaging really hits home with your audience.
One question from my end. So let's just say, somebody is ready to invest in their first, large or mid to large content production for their brand. What are some pointers that you guys would say to look for within whoever they're going to partner with on the production side to make sure that they get what they need in order to iterate quickly and be able to be versatile, so then they don't end up with a bunch of money spent but no assets that convert?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that. I don't know if you want to share too, Jeremiah.
You can go for it. I feel like our head's in the same spot.
Yeah, for sure. There are so many video production companies out there that they don't understand direct consumer businesses. They're went to film school. They're all about being creative, but they don't really understand how your business works. And I think in your initial calls, when you're receiving RFPs from people or you're considering potential partners, you should really be asking them, what kind of stuff have you done to help businesses like mine grow? Because it'll become pretty clear when you start asking that, whether they're more focused on just making beautiful stuff that they can put on their reel that looks good, or whether they're focused on getting you a diverse set of assets that really help you test. That's something that should become pretty clear once you start asking what's your process, and how do you help businesses grow? If they're like, oh, we're going to shoot on this cinema camera and it's going to look so beautiful and everyone's going to love it because we're going to make this beautiful film, that's probably not the direction you should go. When you're vetting your potential partners, really ask them what do you know about social? What do you know about photos? How do we maximize this? How do we get as much content? If they're at all resistant to that, I would say that they're probably not your best choice for a kind of partner for projects like this.
Two things I'll just quickly add is, diversity, I think, is immediate. Their first big campaign, that means you're either it's your first time and you're actually investing money, or it's big because your talent's on set, or you're trying to up the volume, or you're trying to up the quality. And I'll just speak back to our hot swap flow is having a format that allows you to maximize, whether it's big talent for the first time for your brand, to maximize assets because you're spending a lot of money, or this is your first time ever getting a batch of assets that you're going to test. You want to have a diversity, and that really comes down to your approach of how you plan your production day. The last thing you want is to walk away with two assets that flop, and then you lost your money and you're back to the drawing board. If anyone wants to be in touch with us, we do free content audits, and we're down to brainstorm with you guys, see where you're at, meet you where you're at. We jump in on any part of the process with clients, and whether you have your A-list artist that's ready to promote your brand, or that's what you're looking after but you don't know who that is, we jump in at any process and meet you where you're at.
Sounds good. Yeah, and I mean, there's no better case study to Jeremiah and Reese than us, because we've been able to work together on a bunch of brands. And I mean, the one that we highlighted today, Mind Honey, is growing at a very fast pace. And you can really tell, what the proper content does for a brand. It really allows it to have that return on ad spend that you're looking for. When your click-through rate on the ad side of things is where we need it to be, and it just educates properly. And in that case, it does integrate the founder, as you guys kind of were mentioning. And I think when you're able to create that synergy, you just have such a better experience scaling your DTC brand. So with that being said, I'll pass it back to you, Jorge, and we can continue.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I wouldn't sleep on that free content audit. I think that's a great opportunity. If I had a Shopify store, I'd want them looking at what I'm doing with my content. So, all right, now we've talked about how do you come up with like really good content? We have a solution in place there. We just received a Google Drive folder with a bunch of winning content. Like, what do we do from here? At our agency, our process is when we process creative from the creative agency, we take it through our naming convention process, which basically means we grab every asset and we name it, right? We name it in an official, like intentful way. Here's a couple of things that we always like to include inside of these names, which can be things like version, description. That way, when you create reports and dashboards and compare things, it's very easy to do it within the organized naming convention you have. So yeah, feel free to screenshot this if it's helpful to anyone. I would just say also, like, on average, we can expect to test between 50 and 100 assets before we can start to scale stores. So you have to be super organized. Like, when you receive assets, these assets have a lot of thought behind them. They typically have a hypothesis behind them. So you want to follow through on them. You want to name them. So yeah, something I would say is extremely important. So that's the very first thing we do when we receive assets. In the next slide, so here is an example of what we do. Here's 18 assets that we received. An example of how we break them up. So on the left is the spring into summer campaign, which targets that young adult, like college demographic. It's a funnel for them. And then on the right, we have the like Sunshine Family bundle, right? So it's two different funnels with the same sunscreen brand. We broke these up into two different campaigns, and we ran a very simple structure with them. And I'll go over the exact account framework that we use for these assets. First, I just wanted to cover like our thought process when we receive these assets, like how do we organize them? And then how do we think about how many campaigns, how many ad sets, all that good stuff, right? So the next slide we'll go over basically just the two main strategies that we're using nowadays to launch assets. So yeah, there's two ways you can run assets on Meta. The first method is actually the way that we launched these assets and when we launched them back in the summer. So it's basically each funnel into their own campaign. So basically there's 9 assets per funnel. So we grab the 9 assets that are for the college funnel, group them in their own campaign in one ad set on broad. So one ad set on broad with the 9 creatives, right? And we like to say anywhere between 5 to 10 creatives per funnel. The second campaign, the family one, we did its own campaign with one ad set and the 5 to 10 ads related to that funnel, right? So with this strategy, what we're doing is we are letting the creative do the targeting for us. We group the creative by something that Meta's going to be able to say, okay, people have this in common and they're clicking on this ad. So by funnel, by topic. You can also do it by product or by offer. There's a few ways to slice it up. And yeah, very simple, right? And I'll go over some screenshots of exactly what it looks like in the account after this. And then an alternate strategy, before you move on to this one, I'll provide an alternate strategy, which it's one that we're using quite a bit lately. And I think when you want to get very granular with creative, it's a better strategy because you just have a much more isolated environment. And what it is, it's one campaign, but then what you're going to do is one creative per ad set, and it's going to be an ABO campaign where you set the budget at an ad set level, right? So for example, if UVT gives us 10 assets and they're like, here's this podcast video with 10 different versions, let's see which one does best. We would create a new campaign for those videos. It's 10 videos, so we would have 10 ad sets, each ad set with one version of each creative. Each with the same budget at the ad set level because we're talking ABO. So you could say like $20 a day per creative for 10 creatives. And what we would do is we would let them run. Then we would turn off the worst 20 or 30% performers and leave the rest of them on and scale anything that's hitting our target metrics by 20% week over week. So we'll go over an example of that as well in an ad account to give it a little bit more context. So skipping to this slide here. So this is what the CBO structure looks like, or the ABO structure, where we're grouping creative into a broad ad set. So basically it's the 2 campaigns at the top, and then one campaign for the family funnel, one campaign for the college funnel, all the creatives grouped inside one ad set on broad. So yeah, like I said, it's a very simple strategy. It works. As long as your content is well organized and your content's not all over the place, it really works, right? Like if you have mixed signals, like if we were doing a funnel which has college content and family content, Meta would really struggle to find users that are engaging with that content. So we've found the best success by really packaging it all tightly. And then the next slide is an example of the isolated structure, which is the second creative structure that we talked about. And this would be for when you're wanting to get very granular with your creative. But here you can see a campaign where we launched, I think it's 10 assets, each in their own ad set. So each ad set only has one creative. And you can see how, typically what we do is we establish a point where we'll analyze the creative. So we'll say, okay, once it spends anything that's not hitting our target metrics will turn off during that first analysis period. Anything that is hitting our metrics will scale up, and you can kind of see what that looks like, right? Like there's 6 or 7 ads that did not perform, and there's one asset that carried the majority of the weight, right, and brought the majority of those conversions. And that's what you can expect it to look like, right? So it's all in volume. We talked about like you'll need to test 50 to 100 assets to find winners. Most of the stuff's not going to work, right? But you're going to find variations that do work, and you want to have a structure that allows you to identify it and scale it. Lastly here, when it comes to scaling, I think it's important to realize that as you scale, you're reaching a broader audience. And I'm sure most of you guys have heard this before, but customers need up to 10 touches on average before converting. So as you're reaching new audiences and scaling your budget, expect these people to come into your funnel and build awareness to convert on them later. So expect performance to drop before it restabilizes. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. And I would say lastly, maybe even the most important thing is setting goals, reporting, and targets. We could spend a whole hour on this, but I think this piece of because this is one of the most important pieces of the puzzle, I think as a brand, you should know what KPIs you have to hit your revenue goals. Like you should know what that means. I know it's kind of like a daunting task to think about KPIs, but essentially it's goals. Like what are your goals for this quarter or for this year, however you're doing it. As an agency, when we work with our clients, this is the first thing that happens. It's goal setting, forecasting, and road mapping. What are the KPIs that need to be hit? Like what does our cost per click need to be? What does our cost per purchase need to be? What does our conversion rate need to be? As baseline, forecasting them, and then it allows you to make micro adjustments after you launch instead of waiting 6 weeks and then identifying things and kind of having a bit more of a panic situation. So I'm sure this resonates with a lot of people. If it does, I'd encourage you guys to message our VP of Growth, Eric Elliott, on LinkedIn. I'm sure he won't be too bothered by the message. Let him know you guys are coming from the webinar and want to talk about forecasting or goals. And I think it's just something that can provide a lot of clarity for your brand, because you want to be shooting for the right goals, right? A lot of times brands set KPI targets that are impossible to reach, and they're not needed to hit their actual goals. They just haven't done the actual forecast to see what they need to perform or what they need to hit their goals. So yeah, that wraps up the Meta part of this.
Sounds good. And before we jump into the Q&A, I want to mention if you guys are looking for any sort of audit from Jorge or myself, we love kind of just reviewing funnels, and we can pretty much look at the entire piece of the puzzle, whether that be auditing your reporting and seeing what we think of it, or actually jumping into Facebook, Google, or TikTok. We can really look at it from a media buying perspective. So just shoot a text message to myself here. I included it 619-319-0681, and we can set up that meeting and really look at it together and kind of jump under the hood. So other than that, I'll stop sharing, and then I have written down all the questions that we got. So I'll start with this one. I think this is a very valid question. I think this is on the content side of things. So Jeremiah and Reese, you guys can answer. How do you guys go about creating different content for different platforms? And I guess for a brand, like how would you consult them through that kind of analysis?
You got something, Jeremiah?
Yeah, I mean, I think like if I'm always so like we kind of take this like widespread approach a lot with our clients, where they're trying to build for all platforms, and so we shoot for a lot of times for brand. Like a lot of clients do come to us for brand, and then we bake performance into it. And we use that hot swap format to make sure that like when people are rotating, they come back in with that headspace of, okay, now we're shooting a performance asset for 15 minutes or whatever it is. Um, but yeah, realizing that like Instagram is a little bit more dressed up and it doesn't need to be, but TikTok can be more free flowing. Someone also, another question that was in this vein was, just trends. And we've seen so many clients like do assets that were shot on iPhone. The microphone isn't really good. It's got on-screen text, but it's the founder telling their like passion for why they started their brand and why they started their product. And um you would never guess that this would win for them, but this is like their top performing ad. And it's just a slow walk and talk on a street during the middle of the day. And he said, hey, this is why I started this product. It wasn't on the market. This is what I needed. And I created it. And it has these ingredients and it really works for them. And that's crushing for them on both Instagram and TikTok. So it's really like digesting your brand and saying like how far can you go on like the authentic side, and then how dressed up do you need to be, and answering that question for you. And then I think that kind of dictates where you should prioritize your time when going into shooting.
Totally. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So,
Yeah, last thing I was kind of say on that is like a lot of brands, will do that lo-fi format and they'll keep rinsing it. Movement Watches did this for the longest time. Their top performing ad was an iPhone clip, and they made millions of dollars off of it. But, after a year or two later, people just knew them as this like really cheap video, and it was converting for them and getting them sales, but like their brand was kind of being associated with this iPhone clip that didn't really speak to their ethos and the true heartbeat of their brand. And so they had to counteract that with other, sexy assets that were built for brand. So yeah, just be careful with that. If you find success, run it, but also pepper in some brand stuff in there.
totally. Yeah, and I think you hit a limit on like how much you can kind of do that like quick win model. We see it all the time where it's like they have some UGC and stuff like that, and then you get to a point where you can't continue scaling, especially if you have to like expand to like YouTube ads, and like you have to because you're now reaching so much more people. That's when it becomes essential pretty much.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to launch. It's cost effective. You could literally just start doing it right now. Um, but eventually, you need to diversify and have a couple different buckets of content that you're focusing on.
Mhm. All right, I think Jorge, you can answer this question. Ben says, when you make a broad ad set, what goes into it? Do you do any targeting other than age and location?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's interesting. I mean, there is no like one size fit all. I would tell you, like we recently did an experiment on a brand new store, no data on the Pixel, selling stocks, and we did Advantage Plus broad audience right off the bat, and then we tested also interest targeting right off the bat, and even on that brand new store, when the content speaks to the audience you're trying to target, broad, 100% broad. I would say just like if you know that you are selling like, for example, like I don't know, something for a specific age, then you might want to exclude them out. But in most cases, we are doing 100% broad when we're doing creative testing. And then what we would do is once we find winners on broad or things that are performing well, then we can duplicate it out and test it into target audiences or test hypothesis on different audiences. So that's how you can scale it that way. So yeah, I mean, hope that helps. I would say that's just generally what's working in terms of yeah, letting the creative do a lot of the targeting for you. And then we got another one coming in about, and Ben, let me know if that answers your question on it. I think it's all about like isolating the variable. Like I think when you're testing creative, most of the time we do it on broad. And then when we find success, having a process for testing those additional audiences. But yeah, like I said, your store has to be able to have a certain number of conversions so that the pixel can find the right number of users. And if the right type of users are engaging with your content, then you'll really succeed with that. If your content is drawing in like not the right user, which an example of that can be like, for example, if you're doing like a supercar club and you have a bunch of pictures of supercars, people might click on the ads because they like supercars, right? But they might not drive supercars, which is needed for your supercar club, right? So creating the right type of engagement, the right type of scroll stop is really important to make broad work. Um, and yeah, so yeah, hope that helps. And then the other question, how would you advise someone to go about increasing sales for a net new brand? Few reviews, no proof of concept yet, etc. I would say right now, something that's working really, really well for us is like leveraging anything that works organically for paid, right? Like if you have a PR report that went out on your brand and that drove sales, how can you leverage that on paid, right? How can you create content on that? Can you turn that into like a blog or a carousel or video content? If you have an affiliate that's promoting your product and generated sales, how can you connect that to your paid strategy? So I would say that that's a great way to like kill two birds, one stone. If your brand has no reviews, no proof of concept, then work with affiliates, work with people that are going to use your product, find success organically, and then come to the paid media environment, and you'll just find success much quicker, right? And yeah, I'd say that's like what we keep seeing over and over again work. And it can work for brand new brands where you're a brand new supplement brand, you work with a couple people that are influential in the space, then you start figuring out what works and putting money behind it using paid, right? So yeah, I think that's something that's working very, very well.
One question we got through the email that we sent prior to the webinar. This one's going to go to Jeremiah and Reese. What are some things that you guys look for when prepping for a production? So like from the brand side, or I guess in like if you're doing like a founder video, something of that sort, what type of things do you guys look for to make sure that the production goes right and then you're able to kind of maximize it?
Yeah, from a production side, more information about the brand and the product and reviews, etc., is better, especially as we're like developing these scripts. Some of the best and most effective pieces of copy that we've put together have been iterations on product customer reviews. The customer is in a unique place than we are and than the founder is, because they're the one who actually spent hard-earned resources on the product in a different way than the rest of us. So we may have, all these great top-level ideas, and we may have, such a great affiliation and know the product inside and out, but we're not in the position to have seen something randomly and spent money on it. So their thoughts on the product with that sort of complex in mind is always super helpful. Like the comparisons they make to other products, like the things that you never would have thought of. So that's something that specifically I like to dig in a lot to, is like, what have you heard in the past? And like sometimes I'll even just get like an export of like, the last few months like reviews in a spreadsheet and just like keyword search and find what people are saying, because that just informs so many creative ideas that are not in the normal process that we would have. So that's one thing that's super helpful. As far as preparing to get on set, on camera experience and on camera comfortability really always comes across in the content. So often brands will want to have their founder speak, which is a great idea, but it also doesn't hurt to have either some other kind of employee who feels really comfortable on camera, or some kind of creator who has a good affiliation with the product on camera, or just someone else who is good on camera. And it's never a bad idea to have also someone like that on set to test ads with as well, in conjunction if you are doing like a founder video or something. Because the founder story is a useful bit in the whole content flow. It's a useful portion of things, but many customers don't really care about founders. We're also in a unique, interesting position, and like we're all into that. Like we're building businesses and we're growing that. We love hearing founder stories, but someone who's buying your product, like maybe they don't care at all about the founder or where they went to school or how they came up with it. They just want to know how the product solves their problem. So also when you're considering preparing your team for a shoot, prepare the founder, of course. Also prepare someone else who is just really great on camera and can tell a different angle.
Cool. Yeah, I love it. All right, we'll jump into Joshua's question. Jorge, I think you'll be equipped to answer this. If you're testing more creative, are you adding it directly into the ad set that has been running already? Any general advice for testing more creative with existing campaigns / ad sets already running?
Yeah, definitely. I would say most of the time, accounts like that are a bit more mature will have like their core always on campaigns, and then they'll have their testing environments a little bit separate to that. Not all the time, like you can have testing environments that you just scale what works, and then that's the way you run it that way. But I would say the majority of the time, if we have a new batch of creative, we're either creating a new campaign, um, or we're creating a new ad set. So for example, like if we are running just a general like CBO structure where we have 3 or 4 ad sets and each ad set with a couple creatives, and I get a new batch in, I might think about creating a new ad set within that campaign with those new creatives. I try to keep them all related. So if your new assets are about a different product than that original campaign, then you're going to start mixing up the signals. I would really consider doing like a campaign level like segmentation of your account, either by product or by angle. So yeah, like what that would look like as well is like if we receive a brand new asset delivery with 6 new assets, I would say our options are a new ad set with those assets or a new campaign with those ad sets. Um, and yeah, like I said, I think we're like a coin toss between launching them isolated and one ad set per asset. I think if you think your assets are really good off the bat, then that's a good method. Or you can group them together to save budget, and do multiple assets in the same ad set as long as they're all related and they're all going after a similar audience, right? So yeah, hope that helps.
Yeah, totally does. Makes sense. All right, well, we're reaching the end of our webinar here. Would love to see any more questions in the Q&A, if you guys have any. Yeah, Christian, we can send over the decks. Jorge, what are the main KPIs you're tracking? Spend, CTR, etc. And that's from Joshua.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends like brand over brand. I would say the ones we're always tracking are, yeah, like for sure spend. So I would say like we look at it as like 3 different segments to these KPIs. There's like your ad metrics, like how's your advertising performing? So CPM, cost to reach audience to reach your audience, CTR, percentage of those that are clicking on your ad, cost per click, and then cost per purchase, ROAS, kind of like all those. And I would say we're tracking these at least on a weekly basis, comparing against previous weeks and seeing where we're tracking. Um, so that's on the advertising side. On the on-page side, you want to be measuring metrics like AOV. What's your AOV for that offer? Conversion rate. And then if you're troubleshooting even further, like bounce rate and some things like that, depending on what you're solving for. And then on the retention side, you want to be measuring, yeah, like lifetime value, um, returning customer rate, and things like that. But yeah, I would say like a takeaway of something that I think is a really key metric that a lot of people don't track is first time revenue, so that you can know how much am I spending on advertising and how much am I bringing in on first time revenue. So that's also like a really good one that when brands start keeping an eye on that one when they weren't previously, they can start to see like, okay, this month we spent 10 grand, we got 10 grand in new customers, even though Meta only tracked, whatever, right? So you can start to see like the impact that it has. But yeah, I would encourage you to like reach out to Eric. Like we'd love to spend time with you talking about KPIs, and they are unique to your brand. I think setting the right KPIs and targets is like the foundation to being able to set the right strategy to hit your goals. So yeah, hope that helps.
Sounds good. Question I got here prior. What platform would you recommend starting on first for a new brand? Any of you guys can answer that.
Jorge.
I'd probably say, I mean, I think Meta is a great one. Like, I think if you're a new brand that has like resources to create content, like whether you as a founder like creating content or you have like capabilities within your team to create content, then Meta provides that environment to get in front of your target customers to like test a bunch of different messages, test a bunch of different like products and really like see what works. So that'd be like a good place to start. I would also say like this is not the purpose of this call, but TikTok Shop is also a great place for new brands to start. And yeah, I think it's just what are your strong points as a brand? Like what can you leverage, and then use that to kind of inform your first steps. Um, but yeah, hope that helps guide a little bit.
Totally. I think in these last 2, 3 minutes, we can touch on like Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and like the holiday season coming up. So I'd love to hear some recommendations first from Jeremiah and Reese on like how would you kind of recommend a brand going about this season, which is so crazy, and like there's going to be so much rapid testing on the asset side of things, but also I'm assuming in like the brand, right, and what they're putting out there. So
Start early.
yeah, right.
Start early. Yeah. I feel like oftentimes we just get hit up by brands so last minute in the fire drill of it all. They're prepping for the volume that's going to come in or the product that they're going to launch to capitalize on that season. And you're really just strapped with time. We talked a lot about like reiterating and having a lot of options, and that stuff just takes time. The founder shoot could take 2 minutes or 2 hours. You could shoot 100 assets in a day, but at the end of the day, if you don't have enough time to edit those, you're going to be in a pinch. And you want to feel confident going into spending money, that what you're putting your money behind and you're excited about the assets. I don't know, Reese, if you had any thoughts, or you guys want to chat on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. If it is within your capability and schedule capabilities to, maybe even schedule a couple smaller shoots or, test some stuff internally and then bring it to the shoot and, just get started early for Black Friday, Cyber Monday stuff. Just because that's all in the same vein of like diversifying your options and diversifying your assets. It's like in this new era, the more options you have, the more power you have, the more data you can get, and the better decisions you can make. So I think that starting early and testing maybe a couple different kinds of shoots, etc., leading up to it gives you better options.
Totally. Yeah, and I mean we deal with that too. Like we deal with the fire drill and then them struggling with the content side of things during that time, and it's like you could have come up with like a ton of stuff, but now you're gonna have to patch together something that's like doesn't communicate, what we're actually trying to put out there. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Also, too, just last thing there was like, having a getting on top of it ahead of time allows you to like really build briefs, not only for your creatives, but if you are working with influencers or ambassadors or trying to capture that UGC experience and push, like building a brief for all your ambassadors, that could piggyback off of what you're actually shooting yourself, but just the key points you're trying to hit, the value propositions, what style of content you want, having like a 1-page brief you can hand to people and just really be aligned going into the capture side of all your assets is really valuable.
totally. All right. Well, I think that's time to wrap it up. I think if anybody wants to reach out to any of us, can do so on LinkedIn, or if you guys want to repeat your email, I think that'd be helpful to anybody who's yeah, there it is in the chat. So I'll go ahead and put our information in the chat as well. Jorge, anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, I think it was super cool to see just kind of like both sides of like the content and then what you do with that content on the meta side. So yeah, super cool having you guys on here. Jeremiah and Reese, thanks for hopping on, and yeah, we're excited to do more of this like learning resource style of webinar.
Hell yeah.
Great. Thanks for having us. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks everyone for joining.
You too, man. Talk soon. Bye.
You guys.